Thanks for stopping by. I wanted today to take a look at, as you can see on the screen here, we have Diddy and his father, Melvin Combs, and I started to take a closer look at kind of his upbringing. P. Diddy's, that is. I just find like these cases when they come out and they break in the media, Diddy and Epstein, in these cases, it just seems like there's a lot more kind of going on than just Diddy or just Epstein. That there's a lot of other very high-ranking people involved in these kind of blackmail, honeypot operations, whatever you want to call them, and all of these things come out, and these civil suits against Diddy, and it's been, I just think to myself, man, how does a dude run this thing for this long and seemingly stay out of trouble? I mean, he's never been to jail. He's never been locked up. And I mean, he's been doing this for over 30 years, which, even now that he's had his, mansions raided by, I think it was Homeland Security. I mean, he's still out just kind of roaming around. Hasn't been arrested yet. Will he be in the future? I guess we'll see. But I started to look into kind of his upbringing, and his father, Melvin, was in the Air Force, and his mother was a model, I think it said. And after he got out of the Air Force, his dad, it says, like the official story, he was just an associate of Frank Lucas, which a lot of people remember the movie, 2007 movie, American Gangster, with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. And Denzel plays the character of Frank Lucas, this heroin kingpin in New York City in the 70s. And, the entire story that goes with that. And so apparently his dad died when he was around, I think 35 years old, something like that, like a drug deal gone bad. But I started to look into, his dad's connections to Frank Lucas, and, Frank Lucas was, the point person basically for heroin distribution on the East Coast, back in the 70s. And, there's always been kind of allegations that I'm about to get into about where he was getting the product from. But I started to look into, and I found this interview with Frank Lucas from years ago. And one of the things that I guess was contentious in the movie was the, allegation that, a lot of the heroin that was coming back from this Golden Triangle area over, in the Vietnam region during the Vietnam War, was that the United States, or factions of the military and the CIA, were basically running heroin back into the United States in the coffins of allegedly dead soldiers. He claims here that, he did it all right, but then there are other people who were involved who said that they didn't do that, and it was just kind of built up for, I guess the Hollywood script. And, there were a couple of questions in here about Frank and, his P. Diddy's father, Melvin Combs. And it says, I heard that Frank was friends with Puff Daddy's father. Is that true? And he says, yes. According to Harlem heroin dealer Frank Lucas, he and Melvin Combs were good friends. Melvin, used to bring his son, Diddy, to my house every day, at least 2 to 3 times a week. And my daughter used to push him off the toys. Sean, made it great. You see where he's at now. He's at the top of the world. This interview was done a while ago. You can see MTV.com. So, he's saying that he was very close with his father. I mean, his father was bringing his kid over his house, several times a week. And then on another question about kind of his, how much of what kind of role did Diddy's dad play in this whole operation? And they asked him, was Puff Daddy's father a gangster like Frank? In an interview with Miss Jones on Hot 97 FM in New York, Frank said that Sean Combs' father, Melvin, was a gangster on the same level as him. He told Mrs. Jones that he once paid the price of $36,000 to get Melvin Combs out of jail. That was in addition to giving up the key of cocaine that the police had confiscated from Melvin. So you can see just in that answer now that, his father was a big deal. His father wasn't just some mere associate of Frank Lucas. I mean, if you're looking at this is like one of those organized crime charts, he'd be right up there, maybe the second or third in command then under Frank Lucas. And, I found those kind of answers, interesting into what P. Diddy. So P. Diddy was very young when his father was killed. Afterwards, his mother moves out to a part, I think it was Mount Vernon in New York. And he then goes, Diddy goes to the Mount St. Michael Academy, which was an all-Catholic school. And I think he was an altar boy there. And he graduated in 1987. There's a picture of the school there. I think it's in the Bronx, but it's a pretty nice school. So P. Diddy's there, graduates 87, goes to Howard University, and I think left after his second year or so. And then, from there, he starts to become an intern. But looking back at his father's, connection and all this, we have to go back to Frank Lucas's connections. And going back to, Frank Lucas and, his kingpin status, he basically, if you, start to look into it, it was even portrayed in the movie that, he was involved with, he was basically the point person, and the CIA or factions of the CIA was involved in basically the whole operation, moving it from the Golden Triangle to New York City, to Frank Lucas and his crew. And as you can see here, I mean, this has been going on, these allegations, for a long time. As you can see, CIA drug trafficking allegations. And this mainstream source here it goes through the background and all of the different, allegedly times the CIA was involved in this type of, seedy underworld. You can see in France, the infamous French Connection. You see the Golden Triangle here, Southeast Asia. And, it goes, starting the early years, pre-Vietnam War, the Korean War, and then it says later in the same region, while the CIA was sponsoring a secret war in Laos from 1961 to 1975, it was openly accused of trafficking heroin in the Golden Triangle area. So this is during the Vietnam War. So this entire, and apparently it has something to do with, I don't know, the climate there, the topography, but opium plants or poppy seeds are very easy to grow in this area, sort of like Afghanistan as well. And it goes on. Brings in the whole Air America thing. Former Air America pilots and other people involved in the war. It is portrayed in the movie Air America. So this was with Robert Downey Jr. and Mel Gibson. I remember that movie. So this was basically, they were running this stuff through, it says right here, according to several unproven sources. I got to throw that in there. Air America began flying opium from mountain villages north and east of the plain of jars to CIA asset headquarters and then flown back over. So this is where all of those, allegations come from, that the CIA was involved, or a faction of it, with running these drugs, just like they've been for decades, and all these different alleged examples here with France and the French connection, and Nicaragua, and the whole Iran-Contra affair with Oliver North, and that gets into, Gary Webb and all of that stuff that was going on in the 80s and came out in the 90s with Freeway Ricky Ross. Mexico came out, I don't know, years back, and some court documents. The CIA happened to be involved with a lot of the cartels, or at least some of the cartels, possibly providing them with the product, and then, keeping them out of, obviously, the mainstream ether as far as their involvement goes. But, and then they're always the cartel, the different families of the cartel, factions of the cartel, are then the boogeyman for the people to focus on. And meanwhile, the own government is flooding the country with drugs to, further destabilize the masses, and then arrest you if you get caught with the drugs that they brought in. It's the same kind of, cycle that's been going on. Honduras, Venezuela, Afghanistan, another area where the heroin production has always been because of how well it grows there. And there's a lot of allegations there since 9/11, since what some parts of the military were really doing over there. And you can look into that. It goes pretty deep if you want to keep going into these rabbit holes. But that's, so we have this involved, as well as, all of, these connections and the CIA. So that's kind of the world that, Diddy is born into. He's born into a father who is a major player in a wholesale drug operation, involving the CIA. So that's the world that Diddy's born into. And then from there, they kind of tell us, oh, well, his mother kind of picked everyone up by their bootstraps, and they were poor. That's what we're told. But then he, goes to a, all-boys Catholic school, graduates in 1987, and then kind of skyrockets up into the music industry. And it just seems like that part, there's more to it. And if you look, a lot of the times, involving, when you see these kind of allegations with the, the CIA and, drug running and drug smuggling, those things kind of also go hand in hand a lot of the times, allegedly, with trafficking, human trafficking. I don't know how to say it. It's smaller human trafficking, smaller people. A lot of that stuff goes hand in hand with the blackmail, the drugs, the trafficking, all of it. And, he's, basically his father's neck deep in that world. And then Diddy is, is he, my theory is considering that, considering what's about to follow early on in his internship, is it potentially that he's been kind of selected from an earlier age? Maybe they saw something in him, and he was selected and trained, I don't know, in these blackmail operations, and kind of, handpicked at an earlier age to run this kind of blackmail gatekeeping operation for this, hip-hop industry that was just on the precipice of, exploding all across the mainstream. And, next, I'm going to take a look at some of the earlier lawsuits, or the lawsuits that have come out recently with a lot of the others, but the allegations go back to the early 90s, right when he was an intern at Uptown Records. And again, he leaves college after 2 years to go pursue this, or he accepts this internship and is off to New York City, his old stomping grounds. And, I find these kind of details about his backstory, because we're told this rags to riches, which we're told about a lot of these people that are in the, kind of limelight. And, I think a lot of the times that maybe is a cover story to something that's more digestible and feels better for the people who are, aspiring to maybe be in the music industry, or, well, he did it, look at, I can do it as well. But, did he really do it, or was he handpicked from an early age because, they saw that he could basically be the figurehead, the gatekeeper for this industry? Because a lot of the things that he was doing as soon as he became an intern, are interesting, some of the allegations at least. So Diddy starts in 1990. He becomes an intern at Uptown Records, and by 90, he eventually gets hired there. He gets fired, so we're told, and then, as a young, early, he's 21 maybe at this point, early 20s, and in 93 he starts up Bad Boy Records. And he basically is bankrolled by Clive Davis, who gives him basically like a $10 million backing at the time. And Clive Davis is one of those kind of behind the scenes kind of puppet masters of these different industries. He's been in the music industry as a bigwig for many, many decades. So he, basically becomes P. Diddy's kind of in the shadows kind of mentor. So Diddy comes on in 1991, and, the allegations or the civil suits that came out recently, some of them are actually incidents from back in the early 90s, right after he was an intern. And I wanted to kind of go over two of those real quick. So I think it kind of sheds some light on, what was really going on all the way back then. Because these, when you look at these alleged civil suits, this is 1990. So this is 3.5 decades of Diddy's run. And the first one, excuse me, I want to take a look at here is by a woman named Joy Dickerson Neal. And back in 1991, she was a college student, and she basically tells the same story that a lot of the lawsuits from more recently time period alleged. The same exact thing: drugging, essayed, filming. But this particular one, Joy Dickerson Neal, said that Combs drugged her, essayed her, and recorded the assault without her knowledge while she was a student in 1991. She agreed to have dinner with Combs on January 3rd, 1991 in Harlem while on winter break from Syracuse. It was there that Combs intentionally drugged her and took her to a place where he was staying, the suit said. Dickerson Neal said that she lacked the physical ability or mental capacity to fend Combs off as he essayed her. She later learned from a male friend that Combs had filmed the assault and showed it to other people, the suit said. Combs, of course, denied the allegations. So you have, even back then, it's like this same exact playbook that he's been running even allegedly recently, where you have drugging of victims, not knowing what they're consuming. They're in a inebriated state. As she said here, she didn't have the mental capacity or physical capacity to fight him off. And, again, it doesn't allege, but if he's doing this, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if there was another person there that was filming this. And then he's going around and showing, according to this article here, he's showing it to, other people. And this was, all the way back in 1991, which is just crazy that it's the same playbook. I don't know if he was blackmailing these people even back then, but it's just the same thing over and over again. And then after that, there was another lawsuit, and the second civil suit around that time I wanted to talk about was this one here by Liza Gardner. And she filed the lawsuit accusing Combs of SAing her when she was 16, a minor. Gardner alleged that in either 1990 or 1991, she and a friend met Combs and R&B singer Aaron Hall at an event held by MCA Records in Manhattan. After the party, she was invited back to Hall's apartment with Combs, the suit said, and the two offered her drinks throughout the night. Combs then coerced her into having sex relations, the suit said, leaving Gardner shocked and traumatized. Hall barged into the room after Combs was done, pinned her down, and SA'd her, according to the suit. And it's not in this article here, but I've saw some other articles that she also, Liza Gardner, alleges that the following day, Combs showed up at her house or apartment, wherever she was living, and basically, was choking her out to the point where she, according to her, was unconscious. And it was basically like him threatening her regarding the events that happened the night before. And I just found that crazy, that a guy is that reckless that, you're going, this heinous act happens, and then you show up at the person's residence the next day, assaulting her and threatening her, just almost like no regard for, no regard for you getting into trouble or anything like that. It's just very interesting, strange behavior all around. But the fact that he was doing these things even as an intern, and that's why I kind of think these almost appear to be some sort of, trial runs that maybe he's, conducting, to, kind of as a preamble to what's about to come when he is the face of Bad Boy Records with Clive Davis and the backing, and also think that if it is a trial run and he's just kind of, he's going into this knowing that nothing's really going to happen to him, even if something does go sideways, because he has this, kind of invisible hand that's helping him out and protecting him. And it seems like this played out all the way throughout his, reign of the last 30-something years. He obviously has some very powerful people backing him and looking out for him. It's why he's never gotten into any real trouble. Even now, he's still out roaming the streets. Nobody's been arrested. There's just been, strong show of force with the raids on his house and nothing. Maybe they're still gathering evidence, and maybe that is a possibility. But it does seem to be like this is some, if we're to believe his story, that he was just an intern and he's just kind of totally, even though he's new to the industry, and he's just completely going rogue on these two lawsuits from 90 and 91. Sure. That's possible. I can't rule it out, but it does seem like there might be something more to this, looking at the timeline and his soon reign to, the CEO of a major record label. Because, in the 90s, you have the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, whatever happened to Biggie, did he have something to do with that, allegedly? That theory has been out there for a long time. Tupac's dead. Biggie's no longer here. Suge Knight is in jail, in and out of jail. And he's, from the ashes, it's Diddy. And he's basically the main kind of figurehead for that industry and basically a gatekeeper running all of these blackmail operations for any artist that comes in, that's looking to be a star. I mean, he's, it's been documented what he's, had going on with all of these, same thing, even back in 90, drugging, the essays and the blackmail operation, as well. And I mean, he just seems like he's a very, very connected guy. And, you notice that the news this kind of goes to great pains to, not, give you a sense of how connected he is. And he's just like this kind of lone wolf who's operating on his own, but it doesn't certainly seem like that. And even I wanted to show this real quick. This is his attorney I think he's still his attorney now, but this guy, Benjamin Brafman, and, you look at, what it says here about, so he was his, got his big name, this attorney here, back from the 1999 incident with J-Lo at the club. And, it says here that that they had 100 prosecution witnesses and others testify to Combs' culpability. So 100 prosecution witnesses, they rolled up there from this club shooting, testified to his culpability, but still a not guilty verdict was decreed on all charges. And it apparently rose this guy, Brafman, to the, public as this hotshot defense attorney. My point is this: that detail alone right there, how could that be? I mean, this is a connected guy. This is kind of like the golden goose of the hip-hop industry, and they will go to great lengths, whether it's paying cops off, DAs, judges. 100 prosecution witnesses, and you walk out the door. I mean, come on, the fix is in. And this guy, if he didn't get in trouble for that with 100 witnesses, there's a reason why that all these years later, and there's just been rumors of people, his girlfriend, Kim Porter, and others mysteriously no longer with us. And this guy is just, operating almost with some sort of immunity that the rest of us, aren't aware of. But anyway, I just found all of this regarding his backstory. You can just get the sense there's more to this. And he is not just some, lone wolf acting out on his own with this stuff. Again, some of this stuff you can't really, necessarily prove, but that's just the impression that I get. And, this outfit he has here with the black roses, this guy just looks ridiculous. Some of the outfits these clowns wear to their, galleries and balls and Met balls or whatever else these people are involved in. But anyway, I appreciate you listening, and have a good day. Thank you again.